know him.
I want to call to order the Finance Committee meeting for May 21st, 2018. Our first item of business will be a special recognition by our Deputy Mayor Borsham at this time.
Is Randall Hall here?
I think at this time we probably should defer that for a later meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of May 7, 2018.
Reviewing of the minutes, are there any additions or corrections?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Item number 1 passed. Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments May 3, 2018 through May 15, 2018.
Do we have a report from the Purchasing Committee?
Yes, I'm sorry. We did not have a quorum tonight, and maybe that was my delay. I'll call it off at that. We did not have a quorum tonight at the Purchasing Committee, but I did bring questions tonight, and I do appreciate the staff answering those questions, and we did review those items. I would recommend approval of those items.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we approve the claims. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Item number 2 passed. Item number 3, please.
Consider approval of lowest bids for the following road material. Number 67 wash rock, 3-inch pit run, 12-inch pit run, and number 2 cover material to Kemp Quarries, and limestone screenies to Kemp Quarries. Asphalt sand alternate number 1, and fill sand alternate number 2 to Muskogee sand. Asphaltic concrete type B and C, alternate number 1 to Tulsa Asphalt, and alternate number 2 to Roberts Quarries, and alternate number 3 to Tulsa Asphalt, hot cold patching material to Tulsa Asphalt, 1.5-inch aggregate base to Kemp Quarries, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is our yearly bid for our aggregate materials and our asphalt. We've taken the lowest bid in each case, and we recommend approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Item number 3 passed. Item number 4, please.
Consider approval of the lowest bids as follows. A, 3,500 PSI at $85 per cubic yards. B, 3,500 PSI high early concrete at $90 per cubic yards. C, 3,000 PSI at $84 per cubic yards. D, Portland dry mason at $70 per sack. E, flow fill at $60 per cubic yards. F, city paid dray at $60, all to Muskogee ready mix, all for fiscal year 2018-2019, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee, this is our yearly bid for our concrete materials that we use throughout the year. And again, we're taking the lowest bid in all cases, and we recommend approval.
I've got a comment to make. It appears to me in the past that we've given what we thought was the lowest bid and had people monkey around with multiple deliveries and gig us on this and this and this and that, all while Ready Mix never seemed to take advantage on any of those points. So I'm happy to see that they got the bid, and next time somebody else wins the bid that may be out of town or whatever, if we'd look at, and are you aware of some of what they've done?
Yes, yeah. I'm aware, and we have not had those issues with Muskogee ready mix.
No. But I want to keep that in the back of our minds when we're looking at bids.
Yes.
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Item number 4 passed, and with that, that was the final item for our Finance Committee.
I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's Public Works Committee meeting of May the 21st, 2018. Go ahead and start with item number 1.
Consider approval of Public Works Committee minutes of May 7th, 2018.
Do I have a motion?
Move the approval. Second.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Item number 2.
Consider approval of resolution number 2723, adopting and amending Appendix A of the City of Muskogee Code pertaining to all fees, charges, and rates for the Muskogee Civic Center.
This will be my item since Gary is out tonight. This is something that we moved to the Facilities Committee, and from it we decided to have a subcommittee where we could take a little more time with it because this was very important since Spectra had made some changes in the rates that we really took a look at the rates. So we took a look at other venues that was in our community, from Hamlin's to Martin Luther King Community Center to other venues, and then we took a look at the Spectra rates. And our goal was trying to make sure that the rates were comparable from what the Civic Center rates used to be to comparable to other venues in our community, and make them as affordable as they possibly could be to our community, but yet also that we didn't take really a hit. We all know that, especially as city councilors, that a civic center is not going to make money in our community. That's why it's called a civic center. It's a community building, and we want it to be a community building. We know there are some benefits of Spectra coming in. They brought in venues to our community that we as a city could not bring in. But also there was a tremendous rate increase with our rooms, and we lost a lot of business and community events. And that's when the subcommittee looked at the rate structure. We wanted to make sure and bring back customers to the Civic Center that virtually community events had been run away. And part of that was through the room rates is, one, you had the sticker, what I'll call the sticker shock. You had the initial sticker shock of this is what the room rate was, and then there were additional fees that come along with that. So what we wanted to make sure is that when there was that cost of that room rental, or with that rental of what that Civic Center was going to be, it was going to be all inclusive of what it would be. So there would be no variation of what it was with the outside contractor, which is with what we had subcontracted out Spectra. So I think the subcommittee done a really good job of trying to get it in line with other venues. We really thought we had done a pretty good job, and then what we done is Gary took a look at the budget, and then we found out that there was other fees, and we pulled the subcommittee back together and reviewed it again, and then we took it back to the facilities board. And that's what brings us to tonight's rate structure that you have in your packets. And you'll see some of the fees look almost identical to what Spectra rates are. But that is really deceiving because there were so many fees related to what Spectra's rates are. You can almost take any of the existing rates that were there when Spectra was there, and there's virtually anywhere from 30 to 40% reduction in room rates. So it really does put them in line where we're going to get our customers, which is going to say our community, back involved in the Civic Center. We feel like maybe more from a facilities board perspective, now it's going to be our goal of getting back in touch with our community and saying the Civic Center is back open, and we have made the community, the city council has made a commitment to the Civic Center. One thing about moving Spectra into our community, I don't think the city council would have committed to making a lot of the improvements in the Civic Center. We made a lot of the improvements to the concessions, to the vending, to the ticketing, to a lot of improvements in the Civic Center. With that, we've made improvements in the Civic Center that now a lot of the rentals can take advantage of. So that's what brought us to the recommendation that's in front of the City Council tonight. Questions? I'm actually the presenter on this item, so questions from the City Council on the room recommendation.
I've got none, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate your work and leadership on the committee, and I think they've done a good job.
I've got a couple. On the rooms A, B, and C and D, those are pretty average-sized rooms. They're not great big. What do you get for your $250 for a suggestion? Just the room rate for the, how long?
It's all day long.
And
So, and that's one of the things that we really discussed a lot about, because I was involved in the process on the facility board when we set the room rates for the Martin Luther King Center. We set it at 4-hour blocks because we really sent it for multiple rentals throughout the day. But really the Civic Center, through the insight of the staff that has worked there in the past, it has really worked best for it to be an all-day rental, and because most of those activities have been of the evening. So it is pretty well all day. So not only do you get the room rental, but you're going to get the sound that's going to be available in that room. You're going to get any projection that's going to be available in that room, and you're going to get the ability of putting that event on the sign. So that's going to be, and that's what we felt like was really important. And that's what kind of Spectra, what I would say, kind of done. I don't know that they done it wrong in the past, but that was that hidden fees in the past, that you would have $250 room rental rate, and then you had there's $75 cost for the sound. There's this much cost for cleanup. There's a 20% fee. We don't know what that fee is. There's this kind of cost. There's that kind of cost. Now with the new rental rates, there's $250. This is what it all includes, and there's no cost for that.
okay.
So if you had a birthday party in there, you could actually put out there, Dan Hall's having a birthday party in A, B, and C.
And I'd be the only one to show up.
Not true.
I was just curious because, and I'm glad you explained that, because I was looking at the $75 for 4 hours and the $150 for 8 hours for the Martin Luther King Center. And I know that's a nice facility and a nice deal, and we don't want to hurt their rentals, but still yet we want to make sure that the Civic Center's getting something in there too. Sorry, Councilman Reed.
Well, and that's why we really, we took that all into account. Martin Luther King Center, the room rental rates was really set up to cater to birthdays, parties, small events, and multiple activities. And it was really set up where those would go on during the daytime when staff was there, not calling in staff after hours. So that was really helpful when we worked with the Civic Center staff that had already been at that event and realized that we're really, it's two different activities. Okay. So it was very insightful working with the existing Civic Center staff.
And to clarify, Martin Luther King are 4-hour blocks, and the Civic Center is an all-day.
Yes, and some of those blocks at Martin Luther King can even be 2, or we got away with.
We just do 4.
Yeah, we had a 2-hour block and we done away with it. Now it's 4-hour blocks only at Martin Luther King Center.
You can purchase additional hours, but I believe we offer like 2 hours additional. Then if you get into the 3-hour point, you just have to go ahead and take the 8-hour block, which would actually almost meet where the Civic Center is when it comes to price.
That's kind of where I was heading. Yeah.
Yes.
And then the additional fees regarding the catering buyout and the ticketing buyouts too are no longer with that.
Yes.
You can bring in local catering rather than having to use somebody from out of town with this way Spectra had it.
Great.
And that was a very, very beneficial point. And she also served on the facility board, which I think you had been involved in a number of the fundraising events that had actually chose no
Well,
longer
I don't know
can we
who
use.
appointed Jamie, but they were brilliant.
No longer could we use the Civic Center because of the fact that of the fees related to the food, and now no longer are those a part of it, which it can be a real big advantage with that.
Well, I think this is a good look because now it gives our residents options in an affordable way without forcibly driving them to venues that they may not prefer. So I move for approval.
And I'll second that, and thank you for doing your due diligence today.
Yes, sir.
So I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Item passes. Item number 3.
Consider approval of resolution number 2725, declaring one parcel of property, more particularly described in the resolution as surplus to the needs of the city, and authorize the conveyance of said property or take other necessary action.
Ms. Callahan?
Yes, thank you, Committee Chair. This is our standard resolution to declare the property surplus. Mr. Strumer has requested this lot to build a single-family structure on it, and it will be required in that time frame of the year to get the building permit to maintain the property.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Move the approval.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second.
I was just going to ask Mr. Chairman, had anyone expressed any concerns, or everybody seems to be fine with it in the neighborhood and that kind of deal?
Yes, I mean, it's been an available lot for quite some time.
Okay.
So,
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Item passes. Item number 4.
Consider approval of a preliminary and final plat of Wallingford Addition consisting of 2 lots on 2.28 acres located 11 Beckman Drive, or take other necessary action.
Ms. Callahan?
Yes, thank you. This is a request from James and Chelsea Wallingford for a preliminary and final plat of Wallingford Addition. It does consist of 2 lots on 2.28 acres. It's located at 11 Beckman Drive. It's requested for residential development. There is currently a home located on Lot 2. They are technically splitting off, or now having to plat the property to be able to build a residential structure on the Lot 1. And it would then also require to have, at the final plat approval and filing, to release the 60-foot road easement that was filed originally, and that will be vacated in the proper manner. So staff, subdivision review, and planning commission have all recommended approval. That's pretty
Any
much where it's
questions?
located.
Any questions from council?
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other items? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Item passes. Item number 5.
Consider approval of the appointment of Monty Wapaha to serve a 4-year term on the airport board beginning June 1st, 2018 and ending May 31st, 2022, replacing Weldon Stout, or take other necessary action.
Councilor Reed?
Yes, this is my appointment for the airport board. I haven't met this person personally, but looking at their resume and their application, they have a professional pilot's license. They have a history in the Army. I think that would just be a perfect fit for our airport board. I had a difficult time finding someone to serve in this position, so this is someone that reached out to us and showed interest and wanted to serve on this committee. So it is with my honor that I present this person as the appointment for the board.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Item passes. Item number 6.
Consider approval of resolution number 2724, authorizing the continuation of the account fund for the City of Muskogee entitled Solid Waste Improvements, and designating the manner in which said account shall be operated for the upcoming budget year 2018-2019, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee, this is our yearly solid waste resolution, which lets us to continue to function and use that money for the capital improvements. We recommend approval. So.
Any questions on this item?
It's the same as this. It's an agenda item.
Move for the approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? I myself believe this has been another one of those very good things that's continued to make improvements and provide a funding structure for us to continue to move forward as a community. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Item passes. Item number 7.
Receive report on 2017-2018 street plan or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley again.
Yes, I'm going to give you an update on the current street plan for the remainder of this year. Just as background. Oops. The three things we do to streets are the tools that we have in our toolbox that we use. We start with microsurfacing, which is what we'll do is we'll seal all the cracks and then we'll repair any really bad spots. And this is in the case where we do not have a lot of structural failures because microsurfacing puts a new black 3/8 inch surface on the pavement, but it doesn't add any structural components. So it needs to be a street that may be weathered, cracked, and such, so that we can do that. But we put the microsurfacing. This is something we do on some of the main streets downtown, and it comes out looking really nice, and it does extend the life of the pavement. On the other side, we've got the chip and seal, which we do more in residential areas, low speed roads. It's a little bit less expensive than the microsurfacing, where we put down the tar and the chips on top of that, and then make sure it's sealed above that. Again, it's not necessarily a structural solution, but if it's a case where we have cracks and bad areas, we patch the bad areas and come back with the chip and seal. And then in the more heavily traveled, higher traffic areas where there's trucks and things, we do a mill and overlay, which is we take out with a milling machine, as shown in the picture there, 2 inches of asphalt, repair any bad subgrade, and come back with a 2-inch asphalt overlay, which leaves the street in a repaired condition that should last. Typically, a mill and overlay is going to last in the order of 20 years. Just as a summary, we have 321 miles of street. You can see the breakdown of the asphalt, chip seal, and concrete. PCI average is a strength in the condition of the street average. Statewide average is around 59. We're 61. We're real close to the statewide average. Concrete streets are in better shape than the chip seal and the asphalt, just by the nature of the product. And that's just a summary of where we are right now. The way the plan was set up, we have 4 quadrants and then the central business district. We started in the northwest, worked our way counterclockwise around, and we're back in the northwest for a second time. So we've been through this plan for 5 years. The central business district was on last year's plan. We delayed it to this year because of we were trying to get a Tiger grant for Main Street, and that didn't happen. So we're going to go ahead and do that in the remainder of this year. Summertime through October, we're looking at one thing about the fiscal year. It doesn't fit real well with street construction because we need to work through the summer, and it changes in July. But we carry the money over. The money stays in the same fund. We're also doing the northwest quadrant, which is this area right here. What our plan is, we're doing about $400,000 worth of mill and overlay, which Main Street would be in Emporia, and there's a lot of side streets that we're doing that. It's really the streets that along Martin Luther King that were damaged during construction. They got put into pretty bad condition because of all the truck traffic during construction. So that we're doing a lot of mill and overlay in that area. Chip and seal includes 3rd and Temero, Talladega, 14th, and it's lots of other side streets. We're going to spend $200,000 there. And then we're back to the CBD with the microsurfacing, and we're going to do $600,000 worth of that with Broadway, Dennison Court, and lots of other side streets. The mill and overlay and the microsurfacing, we're going to bid for a contractor to do all the work, and then City Forces will do the chip seal work. And all those numbers are based on our historical estimates. And then the other area where our street crews are working is we have about 200 street cuts from utility repairs, and we're trying to catch up on that. So we're spending a lot more time at that, and that's where we have approved another $300,000 in the budget for next year to help us get that under wraps. So, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Mr. Riley, it's before come to the city council about, what our current street index and how much money needs to be set aside for our streets to maintain our current street index. What was that number? It was $3.2 million, correct?
Yeah, it's around three. The study we had done, I think it was 2011. It said between $3 and $3.5 million a year would maintain our current PCI level. And that's, and we're not spending that much on the streets.
Yeah. So
And that's not moving forward. That's just not moving backward.
That would be keeping us. If we were spending that much, we'd be keeping up with what we have.
Yeah. So the street committee, to your point, is taking that up as one of their major projects, is to look at this 5-year plan. How do we fund how do we fund that maintenance level? How do other cities do it? What would we want to do beyond that? Do we want to improve our roads beyond the current level? What would that cost? So the street committee's already started some of that work. Of course, the staff's doing a lot of it, but they take direction from the street committee and, of course, from this body. So in the coming months, as part of our strategic plan, we're going to come back to you with ideas about how we address the situation that you're talking about.
And I just think that's really important for the community to know. I think it was just shocking for me to know. I mean, really, we've always, I guess, guessed at it. And when that first, when we first had that report and that street index, and we knew, one, that we fell in line with what most other communities, their street index was. We say we've got the worst streets, and really, we found out that our main arteries are about the same condition as what most other communities are. But when you go down our residential areas, we found out that our side streets are about what other residential areas are also. They fight the same battles that we do. And yet we were spending at that time, Mike, I believe we were only spending about $500,000 out of fund. And we needed to be spending about $3.2 million. So it was a real shocker to me when I came on council that we needed to be spending $3.2 million and we were only spending $500,000. And the council's made a big commitment to continue to move more money in that direction as streets, but we're so far away from what we need to be doing. But we're heading the right direction.
We might also point out that if we fail to keep up with certain streets in certain areas, once they hit a certain point of degradation, it almost has to be dug up and completely redone. So, penny wise and pound foolish, but we're really at a point to where we need to get on it before it gets to where we can't do anything with it.
I think it's kind of the step that the council took on the infrastructure improvements on water and sewer too. I mean, it really is. If you don't do something, it's huge, and that's what I'm glad to see, that we're moving our budget forward and making improvements to at least get to the street index. I mean, this isn't even moving us forward. This is just, or it's just not continuing to go backward and backward and backward. Thank you, Mr. Riley, for your report. Other questions from council?
Mr. Riley, I got a question for you. How long does the asphalt street or mill and overlay street last?
Typically, in my experience in this part of the country, if you do a full 2-inch mill and overlay, you should get somewhere around 20 years out of it.
but there's going to be problems with it as it snows and rains and stuff. You're going to have to do some fills.
And you need to seal the cracks and things as they after about 5 years to continue that.
How long
to
does
get
the
that life out of
concrete
it.
surface last?
Your concrete may last quite a bit longer.
With less maintenance on it?
Right, but the upfront cost is
Do
significantly.
we currently have any kind of ordinances or anything that tells people on any new housing additions or areas that built that that they need to use concrete for their roads through them, or is it just whatever? It's just a suitable surface,
hard surface.
hard concrete. The reason I'm asking that is that because I was driving through the other day and I was going out by where the old Dick's it was. And I noticed that when we put that street in there or redid that street, we left it asphalt. And I'm like, man, how beautiful would that have been if it would have been concrete? But we didn't have that much money. But I was just thinking, why would we put asphalt in when we could have done concrete that would have lasted longer?
It's a cost issue.
I know. We need to make sure that we stay on top of the cost and put decent streets in as we go, and still trying to put asphalt in and then keep up with them if it lasts a lot longer. I just like to, my point, just making it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know it sometimes when we've done parking lots, as far as the school, you can bid an alternative, and it depends on oil prices. Sometimes concrete is equal to it, but it just depends on oil. Yep, sometimes they're right there together. It just depends on oil prices. Good question, Dan. Other questions from council?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was wondering, Mr. Riley, on all this here with these streets we're putting in, how about the infrastructure under this?
Underneath?
Yeah, the infrastructure underneath. Underneath.
Oh,
the
you're talking about the utility lines?
Yes.
I mean,
water lines and stuff.
a lot of that's being addressed with the OWRB loan money. We are replacing lines, and we're going to coordinate that with these streets to be sure we're not if it is an area that we're going to come back in soon and replace a water line, we're not going to do one of those streets. We're going to hold off and be sure that we're coordinated, because we don't want to come back and cut a fresh new street with the project. So.
I was just curious because I don't want to get the cart before the horse. Yeah. You know, make sure the line infrastructure is in place before we do all this street stuff.
Yeah.
And also another question is, I know you got the northwest quadrant. What's the next section going to be?
It runs counterclockwise, so it'd be the southwest.
And that would consist of what? In case somebody watching this tonight, they wouldn't know what facility this is in.
It's west of Main Street and south of Okmulgee.
Looks like Ward 3, Ivory.
There you go. That's what I was hitting at.
Just thought I'd let you know that. Mine's after that.
All right.
Excellent questions, Councilor Van, but it's not quite Robinson Park.
I understand, Mr. Johnson.
Excellent questions.
I'll
Any
turn
other
the floor
questions?
back over to you.
Any other
Approval.
questions? Got a motion?
So there's no action necessary. This was just
Okay.
a report. We want to make sure
Okay.
that council was aware that we're working on the street plan long term, but also here's what we're doing right now.
I appreciate the report, Mr. Riley, and appreciate the report from the manager. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to item number 8.
Consider approval of the highest bids for a 5-year lease term of Muskogee Davis Regional Airport's grazing land beginning June 1, 2018 and ending May 31, 2023, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee, we're going to present this at last Wednesday's airport board, and unfortunately we didn't have a quorum, so we're going to bring it right straight to this committee agenda. Drew is going to come up and go over it with you. This is the highest bid because this is income, so that's why it's highest. And also want to make sure that he has talked to all the airport board members and told them that we were bringing this straight to committee. So Drew will go over it. He's done some excellent work on it. He's changed some issues in this contract with the help of our attorney, Mr. Tucker, and he'll present it to you.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, committee. So the airport's current grazing leases, they end May 31st, 2018. They're a 5-year term. In April of this year, we put all the land that you see in green on the map out for bid. The city received quite a few bids on this land, and the highest bids for each are listed on the information provided. We also added the bid tabulation sheet for your reference. All these bids are complete and they meet all the requirements of the airport and the city. If you calculate all these bids, add them up, it's $24,200 approximately per year of income for the airport. This is a $4,000 increase per year over the last 5-year grazing bids. All of the bidders, they attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting. They're aware of the requirements of the lease, all the new requirements that we have added regarding mowing and tree removal and removal of dead livestock. I recommend approval. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Drew.
Drew, that's what I was going to ask. If we worked out the deal where they cut those little bitty trees out when they baled the fields down. I appreciate it. I'll move for approval.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
I've received no requests for the public to be heard, so that will conclude our Public Works Committee meeting.
Mr. Graham?
And we will call to order the May 21st, 2018 special call meeting of the Muskogee City Council. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Jamie Stout.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Hale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Do we need to excuse the mayor?
No, that's only required for regular meetings,
Oh,
not
okay.
special.
Item 1, please.
Consider approval of ordinance number 4046A, amending the City of Muskogee Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 74, Taxation, Article 8, Use Tax, by amending Section 74-237, Economic Development Fund, modifying apportionment of tax to the Economic Development Fund General Account and the Economic Opportunity Account for fiscal year 2019 only, providing for repeal or severability and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Tucker.
Madam Deputy Mayor, members of the council, this is an ordinance that would reallocate what is intended to take effect as it relates to how we apportion use tax. Some of you may remember back in 2009, we established this economic development fund to be funded purely from use tax. And as you know, with Amazon and other online retailers who may be voluntarily providing tax, those numbers are anticipated to be increasing over the next few years, and so we're very excited about that. But as the ordinance currently sits, 60% of use tax goes into an economic development fund to be used to fund projects for the city. And then we have 40% that is to be established into an economic opportunity account. Now, many of you may remember that opportunity account is the one where originally we had planned about $300,000 that would go in that fund, which could be used to incentivize businesses and whatnot to come to Muskogee. And you may also remember that last year, we agreed to a one-year reduction of that apportionment to 75 in the general fund, general economic development fund, and 25 into the economic opportunity account. And I believe that 25%, Gene, is the 300,000. Is that right? Okay. And so when that was discussed with council, that was agreed to be a one-year transfer. We had originally proposed it to be a more permanent fix, but the council said they wanted to take these items a year at a time just to see if the economic atmosphere had changed within the region. So as part of Mr. Miller's budget proposal, we have again made a modification to leave the 75-25% split. Again, that would be of the 100% use tax, 75% of that going into the general economic development fund and 25% in the economic opportunity account. I believe, and Mr. Miller, correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason for the reallocation is to allow some of that funding to be utilized to pay debt service on the urban renewal loan, as well as is that right? As well as the three corners?
The 75-25 split is how it's been done since its inception, and we wanted to continue that. The Opportunity Fund money that's set aside this year will be used as it was last year for that debt service, the $300,000. And so what this allows us to do is to keep the operational money like it was last year and keep an additional $100,000 for council-approved projects, but outside the Opportunity Fund. So it gives you guys a little bit more flexibility. We could have put that money in the Opportunity Fund, but this gives you guys more flexibility, which was based off some conversations that we had. The Opportunity Fund is very narrow in its use, but this, instead of $400,000 in the Opportunity Fund, this basically allows us to have $500,000 for incentive funds for the future.
And the $100,000, I want to be clear, that is for economic development use only.
Absolutely. It would have to be economic development use only. It would have to be approved by this body for expenditures. Staff could not expend that money.
Okay.
If you're talking about the opportunity account, that requires a 2/3 majority.
Okay. Specifically, I was talking about the $100,000, so to be clear.
Yes, and that would be in the general account, but it would still require
just for economic development purposes.
It is still in the Economic Development Fund.
Any other questions or comments?
Do we have anything set aside in this account that would help like people that was already in business? Like, I mean, I know like sometimes we incentivize other businesses and stuff. Is there anything set aside that would help an existing business?
Well, the ordinance is before you. I know that through the Port Authority, they do have several that help existing businesses if they're expanding, if they're adding jobs. I think that if you look through here, we may be able to find that if they were...
It's development and redevelopment.
Yes,
so potentially if there was an expansion or something, it could be
a
utilized.
basic mom and pops, unless it was going to add a whole bunch of jobs, we don't have anything set aside to help them out, like we would if we...
It specifically does refer to existing businesses being eligible in this ordinance.
Okay.
And so specific businesses does mean local mom and pop organizations. So not just exclusive to industry, but if we had a restaurant or if we had a pub or something that was going to be established, or an existing restaurant or pub, we can use that $100,000 with the appropriate approvals or a portion of that money to help those existing businesses.
Yeah. And to that point, you guys may recall...
we need to clarify something just so there's no misunderstanding.
Yes.
As it relates to, are we talking about the Opportunity Fund, which is the one to be used for incentive? That's what we're all talking about, right?
I don't think so. I think what we're, Dan, you correct me, I think what we're
I'm on the same
is,
page with you.
Yeah, I think what we're asking is the $100,000, can we allow that money to be used for an existing local business, not just industry, in the event that they decided they wanted to expand or buy a hood or add an employee? Because in my mind, that's still economic development. And I think council...
They were going to expand their business and also cause more employment at that place. Would we be able to help them?
And if it's not written
within the general economic fund, not economic opportunity.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Which
within the general fund, the ordinance allows it to be budgeted and expended for incentives to create jobs and retain jobs for high-impact businesses. And so that's why, depending on how we're talking mom and pop, I just want us to be clear that we're talking about high-impact businesses.
So then what's a high-impact business?
It's defined as those with high skill, high wage, which foster sound economic growth is how it's defined.
Well, that would exclude the restaurants.
Yeah.
I think we need to amend that.
I would agree.
Because I think that the high-income, high-tech jobs, I think either through the Economic Development Fund that exists within the foundation or within the port's realm of control, I think there's enough there to help with that. And I think if we're going to support the this item with the $100,000, I think it needs to be expanded to include those lower end places and lower end jobs, so that the smaller businesses that may not have a high-tech need, at least they have some type of resource that they can consider if they need it.
I agree.
Because our job is to kind of help everybody in Muskogee, not just everybody builds a
Right.
big old huge something out there, a widget out there.
So perhaps, and I'll look to Mr. Tucker on this, but perhaps rather than trying to amend this ordinance on the fly, when we get to the budget, we could transfer that money into general fund from this fund with no strings, with the strings that it must
if
be
there's
used
no
for.
strings, then yeah, you can do
right.
that.
Then we move it into the general fund. It's out of the economic opportunity funds. We authorize a transfer from the economic development account to the general fund for only economic development purposes.
Okay, and that would be much like establishing the solid waste fund that we just
Yes.
did. So it'd be restricted to economic development, but
As defined and voted on by the city council.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think we could-
restricted to economic development, but not restricted to high end.
So I think that's a shortcut to doing that.
And just to clarify, when we talked about the economic opportunity account, which is the general account we use for incentives, right? We made this a little bit confusing when we created it back in 2009. But the opportunity account is the one we use to fund a portion of the Quick Trip when it came here, right? And while those weren't necessarily high-paying, high-skilled jobs, there were quite a few of them. And it made for a rather large economic impact within the city. And so based on those two factors combined is why the council voted to authorize the expenditure from that economic opportunity account back in 2013, I think.
So I say it was 13.
Yeah.
I wasn't here 9.
No, when we created it, it was in 2009. Yeah.
Okay, where are we?
I wanted to see if our treasurer had any problems with our solution that we came up with a moment ago. Okay, that was a pause, but we'll roll with that.
So where we're at now is deciding whether we're going to modify the percentage of use tax that goes in the Economic Development Fund and the Economic Opportunity Account to a 75-25 allocation. 75% of the dollars going into the Economic Development Fund and 25% going into the Economic Opportunity Account. If we did not amend the ordinance, the allocation would be 60% of the dollars going into the Economic Development Fund and 40% going into the Economic Opportunity Account.
And so if we to do what we said earlier, we could make part of the motion here to take that 75-25 and move that $100,000 into the general fund. That's part of this ordinance.
Or can we just,
Okay, now,
can we just vote yes on this ordinance and then just do that?
as part of the budget?
Yeah.
Well, this would obligate that of the use tax, 75% of it would go, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not what you're wanting, that's not what you're suggesting.
That's what he's
I'm
suggesting.
suggesting that it does that, and then of that 75, of the money that's within the 75%, that 100,000 gets allocated into the general fund for economic development purposes.
Okay? But then that wouldn't, we wouldn't be able to do that under the existing ordinance.
But could we just go ahead and approve this ordinance and then in the budgetary process
Yes.
make this move?
I think we'd need an ordinance amendment anyway.
Is anything pressing us to do this tonight?
The budget, as we've talked about before, is predicated on the 75-25, and the $100,000 is identified in the budget as being in the Economic Development Fund, not the Opportunity Fund. And I think we can move that at a later date. The fiscal year doesn't start till July 1. And we can understand the intent of the council and deal with that as at a later date as appropriate, or we can
And work the ordinance over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good as long as we pursue down that path, because I want to be certain that we're able to help those small businesses.
Yeah, I would like to see the budget move forward, but I would really like for us to re-look at this, and I'm all for moving that into general fund, but I definitely want us to work on the wording of that and how that would be expended out of general fund, because I would really want to be very specific of the guidelines on that.
Sure.
And what would be, I mean,
Yes.
that
It
needs
would
to
have
be
to be
thought
spent-
out.
it has to be spent
There's
with
some
council
things that
approval.
I would not want to do on the fly on that.
Sure.
I'm good on moving on this, and I would
We
make,
don't have a motion yet.
I would be glad to make that motion if you would help clarify that for
I'll-
me.
I'll second your motion with the understanding that we're going to work these details out.
Well, I'm not sure that I need a motion if we're going to take no action and amend the ordinance and bring it back.
Can we-
I mean, I could take that as direction to
amend-
staff.
Well, I would recommend that we pass the 75-25 right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we pass, and then if
And
we,
then
then
amend the
that-
ordinance again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can agree with that.
I make a motion that, no, because right now, as it sits, it's 75-25.
Yes.
It will be if we
Yes.
pass this.
And then it's set for, if we don't pass this, July 1 to go 60-40.
Make a motion to approve item number 1.
I'll second that motion with the understanding that we'll address this other item in the future.
Is there any further discussion, questions, statements? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Hale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
And the motion carried. Item 2.
Madam Deputy Mayor, this also has an emergency clause on it, which is required to be voted on by separate motion.
Motion to declare an emergency.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, roll
Roll
call.
call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Hale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll go to item 2.
Consider approval of resolution number 2728, approving the City of Muskogee budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 and establishing budget amendment authority or take other necessary action.
We have a citizen who has signed up to speak to this item, and another one who signed up late who might want to ask for special consideration later. But first, let's hear from Brian Fuller. Would you give us your name and address, please?
Brian Fuller, 3200 South 55th Street East, Muskogee. I'm also president of IAFF Local 57. I was here last week and talked to you about the 2 unfunded firefighter positions in the fire department budget, and I just want to hit on that again tonight. I'll be short and sweet. I want to ask this deputy mayor and council for reconsideration and to fund those 2 positions, and let's get them hired for the safety of the citizens and the safety of our employees, our other firefighters. We are running short. It does cause trucks to be out of service, and we're borderline on affecting our ISO rating, which is insurance rating that sets your insurance premiums. So I'm asking you to reconsider if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Mr. Greer had asked to speak, but he was a little bit late in signing up, and so what could we do about that?
Could I make a motion to suspend the rules and allow a few minutes to Mr. Greer?
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Hale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
He had to leave.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kenny Greer. I reside at 2603 Galahad Court. Wasn't sure whether I should have been under the last consideration or this one, but my question has kind of been answered, and it was does this deal with incentives for businesses? And it has been said that it is. Member Coleman mentioned that we need to help the small businesses, so we need to make it open to everybody. We have given out quite a few incentives here in Muskogee here lately. It has actually hurt the small businesses. It has not helped the small businesses. If I were going to give out incentives, I wouldn't do it. I would stop Let Muskogee be a free market society. When you help one with public funds, you're hurting another. Guys, there is no new money in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Zero. We need to take that incentive money and we need to create jobs with it. Mr. Tucker mentioned that we gave Quick Trip money under economic development as an incentive. We gave Quick Trip $840,000 to fix drainage problems associated with the corner they wanted to buy. A company, guys, that Quick Trip has $840,000 in their shirt pocket. We sold them land for $3.25 a square foot. I would dare to say it's probably the cheapest land they've ever bought, or close to it. They're a company that can afford to pay for their own drainage. When Charlie's Chicken went in on Chandler Road many years ago, the city of Muskogee made him put up $30,000 into a city trust to help pay for stormwater detention pond behind Local America Bank. Charlie's Chicken has been collecting sales tax dollars, paying ad valorem tax, and employing people of Muskogee since the invention of dirt. And he's a local guy, and we penalize him, but we'll give it to an out-of-town company. And Mr. Tucker, I disagree with what he said. He said it made a large economic impact, Quick Trip did on Muskogee. No, they did not. It has not raised sales tax dollars. It took sales tax dollars from Pilot, and it took sales tax dollars from Mike Alberti, who just did over $1 million restoration on his business at the corner of Broadway and 69, and they took money from the creeks, all of which did it on their own. If you'll look at Quick Trip's employees, the majority of them drive down from the Tulsa Broken Arrow area. That money goes right back to Tulsa and Broken Arrow area to their economy. It does not stay here. Where do the profits go? They go right back to Tulsa. We're doing things with these incentives in hopes to create new sales tax dollars. We're not creating new sales tax dollars, people. We're creating new sales tax collectors. The same money that I was collecting, the same money that Brand X, Y, and Z was collecting. Now you all have chosen, these are your new sales tax collectors. It's not being decided by capitalism. It's being decided by you all. What makes a business downtown more important than a business on South York? Why should we give a business downtown $12,000 to open up when there's no new money here, and they push someone else out of business somewhere else? I don't understand the rationale. I appreciate every one of you on this council, and I appreciate what you do for Muskogee. I appreciate your time. I believe everything that you all do, you do with the truest intent to make Muskogee a better place to live and to raise our families. And for that, I thank you. But I really don't believe that you have vetted the cons associated with giving away public money. So before you give away any more, before you continue another incentive program, before you pick an area of the city that is more important than the other, you talk to your constituents. You look at what you've done. I can name you 8 restaurants that are going out of business, for sale, or that are already closed in Muskogee. And we want to incentivize more restaurants to come to Muskogee. Let them come on their own. Let there be money here for them to get. You create jobs. When there's extra money here, we won't have to pay for convenience stores, restaurants, or retail shops to come to Muskogee that have not raised sales tax collections. Again, they've just created new sales tax collectors. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you making a variance for me to speak, and I won't take up any more of your time. I'll be welcome to talk to any of you all at any time about this, and I have a few of you, and again, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. With that, we will go to the budget.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of the council. We'll take a look at the budget. Actually, Greg, can you bring me the little button? I should have asked for that earlier. But as you guys know, we've started on the budget a long time ago. In February, the staff started. We started talking with you guys about that time as well. And so this is, I'm going to zoom through this presentation relatively quickly, in part because you guys have heard it a lot of times. but I want people to know we've spent a lot of time to get to where we're at today. We did start in February. In the background, we need to remember as we look at this budget is sales tax is down $500,000 from fiscal year 2017. That's for this current fiscal year, and that's what we're projecting next year. So everything we do with this budget, we start off $500,000 in the hole. So every single thing that we try and do, we've got to factor that in because we got to figure out how to get out of that hole before we do anything else. Knowing, of course, that those sales tax make up almost half of our general fund. And general fund is where we're going to spend most of our time today because general fund is where the discretionary money is. We have a lot of funds, like we just talked about, economic development fund. We can only use it for economic development. We can't use it for any other thing. We have a tourism tax. It can only be used for tourism-related things. We can't do it. We can't use that to come up with the $3 million for streets, for instance. So when we talk about a lot of these different funds, a lot of the money we have is restricted for one purpose. When we talk about the general fund, that's where our discretion lies, and that's where we get to make our choices. So let's go ahead and look. Here's the slide I always like to show. We want to keep that red line below the blue line. We want to spend less than we're taking in. It makes sense. It's the only way we can really operate long term. So those are our budget principles. We're going to not use carryover. We're not going to borrow from our savings account. If we do have money left over after a good fiscal year, we'll use those for one-time projects. We're going to prioritize strategic initiatives if we have an extra dollar. Raises are a big deal for the council, and so this budget reflects that. Again, considering that we started out $500,000 behind in sales tax. To do that, one of the things we have to do is carefully monitor headcount. We have to look at what positions we have, and if we're able to have to reduce headcount in different areas and maintain good public service, that's an opportunity for us, and that's part of how we are where we are on our budget, is that we have fewer employees than we did 2 years ago because we have $500,000 less sales tax than we had a few years ago. We want to budget for good surprises. That means very conservative on our revenue estimates. We don't think we're going to make a whole lot more money than we did last year, and we want to budget realistically for expenses. We don't want to think things cost less than they actually do. Those are some things that you can really run into on a budget if you don't look out that way. Sales tax, just to emphasize, our budget principles, our sales tax is flat, so our operational expenses are flat. Again, here's a look at where that general revenue comes from, mainly from the sales and use tax. And here's where it goes, mainly to public safety. And so we look at then what do we do with our strategic initiatives? Where do we put that extra money? We talked about streets earlier. You heard Mr. Riley's presentation. You heard him talk about the $300,000 extra dollars in discretionary funds for streets. That's about 15% more addition to our street budget. But that's out of discretionary dollars. In the long term, we're probably going to have to figure out how to pay for our streets differently than how we do now to make a big difference. City beautification, another council initiative. We doubled the abatement budget to help clean up dilapidated properties, tall weeds and grass. So starting next fiscal year, we're going to be able to do twice as much of that as we have in the past. And we have a proactive facilities budget. That doesn't sound exciting, but if something breaks on your building, if your air conditioner breaks, like we did this week in the fire station, we want to have money identified, ready to go to fix that instead of trying to scrounge around and find it. So next year we're going to have that. Hopefully we'll also be able to find those before they break. When we look at having an 18, 19, 20-year-old air conditioning unit, that we decide we replace it before it just crumbles into dust. So we also found that we found a lot of money by saving money with the Civic Center and Hatbox, bringing those in-house. So those are the savings reflected in the budget. More money for water and sewer infrastructure. Mr. Johnson alluded to that earlier when he was talking about the big projects that we have coming up. We found funding for those projects, and that is reflected in this year's budget when we get to the MMA budget. Wayfinding signage is a project that's been identified and is funded this year. And city image is something in the strategic plan that the council talked about at the retreat. Was budgeted this year and added into the city manager budget. We'll be coming forward with the plan on how that is used for your approval moving forward. But that is city image was a strategic initiative identified and is funded in this budget. We have some growth initiatives, matching grant fund, which is a way to say we want to take a city dollar and turn that into one or two state dollars or 3 federal dollars. We've talked about airport and a lot of good things going out there. A lot of those are 9-to-1 matches. So if you can find $9 for every dollar you spend, that's where we want to prioritize some of our money. and the housing grant, to speak to something that Mr. Greer talked about. If we get more people here, we are adding money to Muskogee's economy. We are adding sales tax. So if we can find a way to improve and get more people to build more houses in Muskogee, and so we have some money there for a grant match program for that. We funded retirement reserves this year for the second year in a row, and that's important. We know it's going to happen, and we feel like we need to have some money available for it. And of course, the biggest thing, one of the biggest initiatives that the council has asked us to fund every year is to raise wages for our employees, and that is funded through this budget. And again, being down $500,000 in sales tax, not just for 18, but for this coming year in 19, and being able to accomplish all those initiatives, including raises for 2 years in a row, is a big deal, and it's hard. And I should have said this at the beginning, and I'm going to pause now to say it now. The credit for doing that hard thing needs to be given to our department heads, a lot of our staff that worked and said, how can we do our job a little differently? How can we do it better? How can we do more with less? Because you don't get excuse me, you don't get these things taken care of. You don't get new initiatives done with less money unless you have a tremendous amount of input and hard work from the department heads and from the staff. So I just wanted to take a brief pause so that we could say that and acknowledge them. So thank you all. But that's what the general fund looks like. We've got a surplus there of $41,000. That means we're spending about 99.99%, and we do have. So we're trying to be efficient. We're trying to not leave money on the table. So let's look at some of the other funds. We've talked about general fund. I told you we'd spend a lot doing that. Civic Center and Hatbox, we told you we were going to save $300,000 by bringing those in-house. I think it's a good time right now to pause and say, when we outsourced Hatbox and the Civic Center, we also outsourced the Roxy. And I think it would be fair to say that the Roxy is an organization, or the Oxford Productions that manages that contract, has stayed in budget. And they have achieved what we've asked them to do budget-wise. And so I think that's worth acknowledging that at this time, as we look at what these other organizations have done. Swim Fitness Center, River Country Water Park, those are enterprise funds that are self-supporting. They cover their operations, and they're covering their capital expenses as well. Sometime in the future, we may need to come back and reinvest some city money into those as they age, but I think it's a big success story that they keep paying for themselves. We've talked about community cleanup as well. Capital outlay, we've followed strategic initiatives here. Payment kiosk, for instance, is following an initiative for improved customer service. City Hall upgrades are in the strategic plan, but they're also important because one of the main features is City Hall security. That's been a council initiative over the last couple of years, and so we're funded that. You see those, the other things, and we've gone through the capital outlay budget several times. Economic development, this is what we just talked about at length, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but we'll adjust the ordinances properly so that $100,000 gets where it needs to go. But this is, again, meeting the objectives that we've talked about in the past. Again, this is restricted money. We can't use this for any other purpose besides economic development. The hotel motel tax, same thing. It's restricted. It can only be used for certain things. Two things to point out. Number one, our tourism contract has decreased about $20,000 from last year. And our Hall of Fame budget this time last year was about $14,500, so we've increased that to $55,000 because there's been a council initiative to support that organization at a higher level, and this budget reflects that. The MMA budget, we'll talk a little bit about that here, but for the most part, that's taking the rate increases that are scheduled and set already to go into effect, and taking that and setting it aside for capital projects, and that's the new water lines, the water line improvements, and new lift stations that we're already seeing being put in the ground. So as we get to the end here, I think we need to make sure that these are the highlights. These are the things I'm proud of when we consider that we're $500,000 behind on sales tax from 2 years ago, that we still have revenue more than expenditures in this budget. We still have $300,000 more dollars for streets than we did a year ago. We're doubling our city beautification and our cleanup efforts. We have an extra $100,000 for council-approved economic development projects. We have proactive facilities budget. We have $1.5 million in infrastructure improvements, and we have wage increases for our employees. That's our budget. I know you guys have had it for a long time, and you've heard it many times. We do recommend approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Miller, I just got to say, I appreciate you so much for your leadership in this budget process, and I'm going to have to go back to 2 years ago. 2 years ago when we were at a budget retreat and you moved forward with the budget packet, and I sit there with that budget packet, and it was not from you. It was from a department head, and I appreciate each one of the department heads that were there, because it came from leadership that asked each and every one of the department heads, how can we reduce budget and how can we bring back a budget? And, you know, I've sat on the council for 6 years, and 4 of those years we were spending out of fund balance. And you saw the city of Muskogee heading for a disaster. And it was an immense disaster that I saw on the rise. And when Mr. Miller came in, we were at that disaster when we were spending out of fund balance, and it could not happen again. And with the help of his leadership and with all the help of the department heads, last year it turned around where we equaled expenses and fund balance matched. And I think, again, this year is another example of that, where expenses and fund balance match. But when we have, when we're down $500,000 and yet we're still able to move forward with council initiatives, I mean, where else can you say you're bringing in less income and yet we're still putting more money in streets, more money in employee wages, where we're still meeting the objectives to move our community forward? That's showing true leadership in our community. And I cannot stick my head in the sand, and I don't think any of the council can, of saying that we cannot see some of the negative that's went on in our community from the articles that's been on some of the media, to some of the radio stations, that's just not been truthful. When the facts are there, it's been a council directive, budgetary process. It's not been one person. Now, in the past, 4 years ago, a budget was just hit, and I would go, how in the world did we get these numbers? How can I get them added up? And I would get back with the city manager, and I can't get this together, and we would have to vote on a budget immediately, and we didn't have a choice. Now we have a choice to make directions and decisions, and we've had this a long time. And I appreciate you so much for your leadership. We've had thorough input into this budget process, and thank you. Thank your directors. Thank you for your leadership. It's great to be in Muskogee at this time, even in bad times. You know, it's just bad right now when communities are fighting for the same sales tax. Cities should not be funded this way. Oklahoma has got to change the way we're funding education and the way we're funding school systems. But unfortunately, this is the way we're funded. So I make a motion to approve.
I'd like to echo Mr. Johnson's comments there. I think he stole my notes, but I'd like to echo what he said. He laid it all out there quite well.
Is that a second?
That's a second.
With the discussion of some of the fire department things, and I know I've talked to Roy and talked to Mike over the last week on that funding and everything, and with them being also down their 2 firemen, it also could affect their ISO rating, which could also then turn around and affect the homeowners insurance for not only residents but businesses as well. So I would like to see us maybe amend the budget to approve the hiring of the 2 firefighters.
And I want to say something about that also, whether it's in the form of the existing motion or substitute motion. I think what we need to be able to do with regards to fires, be certain that even if the budget passes as is, without the necessary votes to fund those positions, that we at least have a motion that will suggest that we do a study that is irregardless of the population sizes of other cities, and look at the outcome of that study to see if we can make sense of being able to fund those positions. Because I think what happens a lot of times, because of where Muskogee is in proximity, we're not immediately next to a city that has a backup or alternate fire staff that can help, such as is the case with Owasso and Tulsa, where they may share resources. And so
Right.
I'd like to see something done regardless of how the motion passes or fails.
Well, I could second your motion for a study at a future date, but no change to the budget at this time.
We've talked for some time, and it will be a cost item, but I really do agree. I mean, but I think when we look at staffing, we need to look at, and I think now is a good time with changes, we need to look at police, fire. I mean, budget is our biggest cost. Budget is our biggest cost, and we need to look at staffing overall in our community. But it is going to be a cost item, and we've talked about this for years, because the staffing on the fire department isn't a new issue. These are positions that we haven't filled in some time because of the budget situation. But I think staffing is something that we need to look at overall from a council perspective.
How can we do this? Let me recognize, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
All right. How can we do this? Because I was going to second Councilman Stout's request. I respect the firemen here in Muskogee. I respect the police officers. I respect all our city employees. But they did have a good point they brought to us last week, that we shouldn't, we cannot dismiss it. You know, we need, like I said, the fire department here in Muskogee. They help all the areas around Muskogee. You know, what would we do without them? What would other communities do without them? So, like I say, I commend you, Mr. Fuller. I know you're the union president. And here as a council, I don't care what employee it is, we ought to embrace our employees and thank them for anything they bring to that mic.
Exactly.
You know, because they're our employees, and we need to respect them, just like they respect us. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I'll second your motion, Ms. Stout.
Thank you.
What's that?
So right now, we already have a motion and a second from Wayne and Patrick. And so we could consider your motion a substitute motion, and then there would be a second, Ivory, and then your motion was for a study.
Right? What I'll do is, if the budget passes with whatever necessary votes, I'll include what I need in Councilor Stout's substitute motion.
Could we vote on the budget? Could we?
And then you could direct staff
vote
immediately following?
Or even just have a vote or direction to look at our city, our needs, and look at what the city would have to do to pull off whatever it is we think we need to pull off. And I think that's very important. I'm a little cautious to want to add things to the budget and then back off and how to try to figure out how to pay for it or redo the budget or whatever. But I would be supportive of looking at all of our city personnel, all of the departments, and saying, okay, we've been educated, we've compared us to this, we've compared us to that. What seems realistic, council, at this point? Which direction should we go?
Have we not already had a budget and a study like this done, where we went to all the other cities and the police departments, the cities, fire departments, and averaged them between us and them? I think we did that during the Hay study, and we've done it a couple times since then. I'm sorry, I'm not one of these. I'm not a big fan of all the studies, as y'all know, because every time y'all try to do one, I look at y'all like, oh my gosh, here we go again, because we study more than we do anything.
Well, a study or reflection would entail looking at old information, and I don't know that it'd necessarily be some big consultant coming in or whatever. We would just look at everything and have it presented to us, and we could learn from it and make a decision.
Okay. So just to restate again, Wayne and Patrick, you've got a motion and a second. Jamie, you've made a motion, a substitute motion, which would be to approve the budget, directing funding be allocated for the 2 existing fire positions. Is that effectively correct?
Yeah, I would want that, or
In your substitute motion, you want to approve the budget, but you want the funding to go to the 2
yes,
fire
for the budget to
positions.
be approved, I would like the funding to go make sure we have those 2 firemen.
Right,
That's
right.
on-
And that would be your substitute motion.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But first, we're voting on the motion as is. I mean, we're voting on the budget as is first.
No.
Nope.
We have to vote on the substitute first.
Okay.
And then if the substitute passes, then it becomes the main motion. And then that's
Okay.
what and then if it fails, then we go back to the original motion.
I got it.
All right. So your motion then is to approve the budget, and that directs that funding be allocated for the 2 additional fire positions.
To be hired.
Yes.
So we know
When
where the
budget
money's
starts.
coming from, where we'll have to take it from somewhere.
Yeah, that'll have to come.
Yeah.
The manager will have to make that happen.
Probably out of our economic development money.
And then, Counselor Van, is that your second?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can't come out of economic development. It's a different fund.
All right. So,
And
Is
I don't
this
know,
some-
and I don't know what Councilor Coleman's suggestion, where that
his
plays
is going to
into it,
follow
so-
all this as a staff direction.
Okay.
So his will be the third vote,
I'm third on the list.
if there's a second.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Is this something that we could possibly table and bring back again next Monday?
I second that motion.
And see if he could come up with an area that the money could come from, and then we could really vote on the budget for next Monday. I know this is like playing the midnight hour again, but it seems like there's several people here that aren't happy with the losing of the 2 firemen, and they would like to see if there was a way to budget for it. I know that's not fair to the city manager, but instead of having 14 motions here and we all vote and it's all clear as mud at the end of the night, can we just table it till next Monday and vote on it then?
I don't see the need to wait.
Lord, we got 3 motions just on one item,
Let's
and
vote
it's
on
not
them.
going to get us anywhere anyway because
On them.
he's still going to have to go back and find funding for it if we vote for it to come up with a deal, and then next Monday we're
But
going to
he's
have to
not
vote
gonna
on it
have to
again.
find funding if we don't vote for it. And
But
Marlon has made a great point. Let's judiciously look at it and see what we can do.
The question gets to be, are we going to find the additional funding for the police? Are we going to find the additional funding for the
I'm
support
not gonna
personnel?
argue with you.
Are we going
That's-
to find the additional funding for all the positions
That's
that
what we
we've
need
reduced?
to talk about. That's what we need to talk about.
I mean, really, we have reduced staffing where we can afford raises. Are we going to take back the raises?
We
Or we
might.
can fill the positions?
We might.
But
That's the question.
in spite of my recommendation, I can see Councilor Hall's point that, we look at it and realistically it's just not there, and we know at that time if we do it, we're going to have to take money from this at the other expense. I think that I don't have a problem with that.
So
I don't, but I mean,
So what about the police officers? Are the police positions not as important?
They have police positions and they're hiring for them. They don't have a shortage or anything.
Yeah,
taken away.
we're down a couple.
You're down 4, and if I understand right, we'll have 3 and 1 should be hired, so they'll be full staff.
Councilman
While we
John,
do have 2 unbudgeted police positions in this budget, just as we did last year. We've kept the police and
The
fire
same.
were both 2 under from last year,
Okay.
just to clarify.
I think Mr. Miller has done a wonderful job on this budget. I tell Mr. Miller, before I came in here today, and he can verify this, that I told him what was going to happen. Some of the council, how we thought. I don't try to stab Mr. Miller in the back. Did I, Mr. Miller? I don't try to stab you in your back. I'm going to tell you what I think right off the bat. You know that about me. And I told you before we came, sitting right here, what was going to happen. Is that true, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So I don't.
This is the council's budget, so I don't
Right.
feel like anybody's stabbing anyone
I'm just
anywhere.
saying, though. I don't want nobody to take it that way. That hey, I'm trying to go against Mr. Miller because I didn't appreciate them ads was on TV and all that mess either. But I'm not trying to, stab you in the back.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Well, there's been an
I
awful
guess my
lot of work
concern
on the
is
budget.
if all
and I
the
think we
council
need to
had looked
vote
at the
on it.
packets and looked at the numbers, we would see what positions were down and we would have all had the facts, and we would all see it. Nothing's new revealed.
We can either vote tonight and put it off and have the same votes next week.
So we're either going to bring the positions back or we're going to do it. And if we're going to have professional evaluations, that's what we need to have is professional evaluations.
I agree.
Okay, so
where we are, we have.
I've got a motion and a second on the floor.
Yeah, and there's a substitute motion and second, so that's got to be voted on first.
okay, are
And so that will determine if that becomes the main motion. So the motion to approve the budget, directing funding to be allocated for the 2 additional fire positions is the substitution, okay? So a vote of yes is for the amendment, all right?
Okay.
And then if the amendment passes, we vote on that. That it becomes the main motion and substitutes Wayne's and Patrick's motion. If the amendment that we're going to vote on fails, then we go back to the main motion, which is to approve the budget.
Okay.
No strings. Okay.
Does everybody understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I say it again just to make me feel better?
All right.
All right. A vote of yes is for the substitution, which is to approve the budget, directing funding to be allocated to the 2 existing fire positions. So that's what a yes vote is.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
No.
Patrick Hale,
No.
Marlon Coleman,
Yes.
Wayne Johnson,
No.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Derek Reed,
Yes.
Dan Hall,
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
And the substitution passes. So that now becomes the main motion. So now the main motion on the floor is to approve the budget, directing funding to be allocated for the 2 existing fire positions. So a yes on this motion will approve the budget and direct funding to be allocated for those two fire positions.
Now, what I want to say, Mr. Tucker, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and then I guess we're all ready to go, that, could we make that motion in a way that gives the manager at least another week to be able to find that or not find it, rather than just direct him to blanketly do it? Because I want to be fair from all sides.
He's going to have to find it. He'll find it.
The problem is we've voted on the substitution, and that is the motion that's on the floor.
Okay.
And so once that's been voted on, no one has the ability to change it because it becomes the motion of the body.
Okay.
So if for some reason there's an issue with it, then it'll have to be brought back.
Okay.
If the funding can't be found or for whatever other reason.
That's fine.
Yeah, to Councilor Coleman's point, we don't have the exact dollar amount, for instance, that we'd be amending the budget by right now. So we don't know the exact amount we'd have to reduce something else by right now. I can communicate that, and we can do that at whatever appropriate time, depending on the passage of the motion.
And that can always be brought forward as an agenda item on Monday.
If something happens, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Because technically the budget must be approved, no questions or exceptions, 7 days prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. So one of the reasons, and Mr. Miller has talked about this a number of times, that we start early, so that we're not under a time crunch.
What? Go ahead.
To understand what you were explaining earlier, Mike, were our police positions all funded, or did we have 2 that we're not funding? Say that again.
Last year at this time, when we adopted the budget, we had several positions in many departments that we were not able to fill because we were down 3%. We cut the budget 3% last year. When we did that, we had our largest cost by far in any part of the budget is personnel. And so the groups that took the smallest hit last year were police and fire, but they did take a hit. Parks, PublicWorks, almost every budget went down last year. And so this year we have a flat budget, so we didn't propose bringing any of those positions back. The only positions that that could be in this budget are ones that the council has said this is what we want to do, which is bringing Hatbox back in-house, bringing Civic Center back in-house. That's saving us money, but we're creating positions in those cases.
So what you might do is we'll cut out the employee wages and we can fund these 2 fire positions as an alternative. Is that an alternative in the budget?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood what you're saying.
Not giving the blanket employee raises, not putting that in the budget so that we can fund these 2 fire positions.
Well, and then it goes back to the strategic initiatives of what the council wants to fund and not fund, and that's why it's an awkward thing to do on the fly, to figure out what we want to cut and not cut. But we're talking again about discretionary money here, so money that's in the general fund budget.
I just get a little frustrated that everybody feels the pain, and then we say, well, we're not going to spread the pain out. We're going to do this, and now somebody else is going to have to feel the pain.
I mean, if we were to fill all those positions that we have frozen in the last year and a half, our budget would be in really bad shape. And so it's again up to the council about individual positions, and in this case, we've got an amendment on the floor for specific positions, and so we can address that as we look at the existing budget.
Thank you.
I know one thing, Mr. Miller, that I, as a councilman up here, that I don't want to cut out the budget, and that's security. That's my safety up here. That's my safety up here.
That's probably the first to go.
I don't think so. What happened in the school this past week, that tells us something right there. That safety needs to stay in place, and we need better safety at this city hall. And that's why I'm saying that to all the citizens, in case one day something happens, at least it's recorded. I turn the floor back over to you, Ms. Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Next week, could I make a motion to unfreeze the police positions as well that are badly needed? I suppose I could. Okay, thank you.
So
where
we
are
now
we?
have a motion on the floor, which is to approve the budget resolution, which is by resolution, directing that funding be allocated for the 2 existing fire positions. So a vote yes will approve the budget and the resolution and obligate the funding to be allocated to the 2 fire positions. If the motion fails, then another motion can be made, right? So that's the existing motion on the floor. One other thing that I will point out is in the budget resolution, the manager has authority to transfer within funds. So that's what gives him the authority to find the money effectively and move things around. So just in case you all hadn't read the body of the resolution, that is included within that document.
Thank you.
So we just need a roll call on that motion.
Are we ready for that? Anybody want to say anything else? Okay, roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
No.
Patrick Hale,
No.
Marlon Coleman,
Yes.
Wayne Johnson,
No.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Derek Reed,
Yes.
Dan Hall,
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
5 votes, it passes.
Okay, the motion carried.
And so, Councilor Coleman, your direction of staff is no longer...
It's moot.
It's moot, right?
Well, then that concludes our council meeting. And we will call to order the Muskogee Parking Authority meeting. And roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Here.
Dan Hall,
Here.
Marlon Coleman, Jamie Stout,
Here.
Wayne Johnson,
Yes.
Patrick Hale,
Here?
Ivory Van,
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Item 1, please.
Approval of minutes, Special Call Parking Authority, March 19, 2018.
Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Yes.
Patrick Hale,
Yes.
Marlon Coleman, Wayne Johnson,
Yes.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Derek Reed,
Yes.
Dan Hall,
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 2.
Consider approval of resolution number 2726, approving the Muskogee Parking Authority budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 and establishing budget amendment authority or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, members of the authority, you have the proposed budget for next year before you. We do recommend approval.
Are there any comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
And that's the last item. We will adjourn this meeting and call to order the meeting of the Muskogee Municipal Authority. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Hale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Item 1.
Consider approval of resolution number 2727, approving the Muskogee Municipal Authority budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 and establishing budget amendment authority or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, you have before you the MMA budget, and as we've discussed almost every month when we have our regular MMA meeting, we have the operations budget, and then we transfer a lot of money into an account for debt service. That's $1.5 million, capital projects in debt service, and that's going to be $1.5 million this year that we're excited about. Additional funding for infrastructure, and with that in mind, we recommend approval.
Move for approval.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
And the motion carries, and that's the last item, and we are adjourned. Good evening.